and Matthew Syed. Great to see you both this evening. Thanks for being with us. The paper's really being published a little bit too late to get that breaking news in this evening about the scuffles, the arrests, the clashes, however you like to describe them, that took place on Clapham Common this evening. Matthew, we can actually look at some of the footage now. I mean, really worrying scenes, and clearly there is a huge political fallout from this.
Yes, I had some doubts about the legislation. The risk of transmission when people are outside is quite low. So I felt that it was rather too onerous. And I think a lot of the public felt the same way. These scenes do look extremely disturbing. I can certainly understand why people might draw the inference from what we're seeing that the police has been heavy-handed. But I'm a bit old-fashioned, you know, sitting and looking at pictures from where I am in my living room, still pictures that will doubtless appear on the later editions of the newspapers. I think we should wait and see exactly what other people have to say, what the evidence is, police testimony, the testimony of people on the ground, to get as much of the context as possible before we reach a definitive judgment about what is a politically highly explosive scenario.
Yeah, let's take a look at the front page of The Observer. The headline there going with "Pressure grows for new laws to curb violence against women." Susie, it was always going to be very tricky, this, wasn't it? Telling people that they can't go and have this vigil as they wanted to, and yet knowing that people probably would turn up. And we're in the middle of a pandemic. It's very, very difficult. But you do wonder why perhaps the police couldn't just sort of stand back and monitor things this evening. But as Matthew says, it's very hard without all the facts. But right, you think, the Home Secretary to call for this investigation so soon?
I don't think we need to wait too long for very many facts, because there's an awful lot of video footage coming out showing women that are sitting peacefully at the bandstand being grabbed and dragged off Clapham Common while they're marking the death of a woman who was dragged off Clapham Common. There doesn't need to be a huge inquest or sit and wait for the context of that. The context of that is disgusting. And it's not really, I don't really care whether it's Cressida Dick or Priti Patel or anybody whose responsibility it is. Whoever decided to send the heavies in needs to go. And whoever decided at the Metropolitan Police earlier this week that they would not engage with the protesters and would not discuss with them the ways that they could hold this vigil safely and securely should also go, because that decision will have happened right at the top somewhere. And whoever decided not to engage, to not put anything in writing, as the organisers have said, and to not sit down with them and all discuss the way that this could be held safely, as they did with Extinction Rebellion protesters last year, as they did with the Black Lives Matter protesters, as they do with football teams regularly, whoever made that decision is ultimately responsible for what's happened here today. And we need to remember that whatever you think about what's been going on there at Clapham Common, there is a mother tomorrow who is marking Mother's Day without her daughter because she was walking home one night, got into someone's car somehow, and ended up having to be identified from her dental records during the course of the week. And how does that mother feel looking at the footage of the women peacefully marking her daughter's disappearance and tragic death? Yeah. And how do they feel about it? Yeah. I've got to explain it to my 5-year-old tomorrow. It was International Women's Day on Monday, and here we are before a whole week even has passed, and women who are peaceful are being physically dragged away from marking the death of a woman. It's astonishing. It's tone deaf. It's incredibly immoral and illogical to even a complete lack of common sense. Whoever is running that operation actually on the ground there tonight. But it was peaceful all during the day. And I think we should also remember that tomorrow, and as you know, the fallout of this starts trickling through, people are going to start briefing, and we're going to start hearing the line of, well, the police did ask them to stay away, you know, and they did turn up, and they probably shouldn't have done. The police told everybody to stay away day and night. The future Queen of England turned up and ignored the police today. Kate was there ignoring the police advice to stay away. And if she can do it, then there's no reason that the rest of us can't.
Well, let's talk about that in a bit more depth then, because the front of the Sunday Telegraph shows a picture of Kate, her tribute as she recalls how it felt to walk in London at night herself, of course, before she became a part of the royal family. And interestingly, Matthew, there's also an analysis piece here. Duchess's flowers have a pointed political message for the Prime Minister. She obviously thought a great deal before she went and made this very public statement.
Yeah, and one can fully understand it, because the amount of testimony that we've heard this week from women who have spoken with great eloquence and poignancy about not feeling safe on the streets, particularly late at night. I mean, it has been, I think, a wake-up call of a really quite profound kind for at least that half of society that I'm a representative of. So I think it was a very dignified visit by Kate to the vigil. But just one thing on the police response. You might remember, Susie rightly pointed out that there's been some inconsistency in how the police has responded. But you might remember with the Black Lives protests, the Black Lives Matters protests, that the police were severely criticised for not properly enforcing the law. And I just think, I'm not in any way defending the police. The images that Susie described, they are extremely damaging and chastening, and one feels angry about them. All I'm saying is that before reaching a definitive conclusion, I mean, it's on the same night that it happened. Due process, I think, requires us to at least hear their explanation, to probe their explanation, to test it severely, but nevertheless to listen before making a judgment. I've been shocked on Twitter to see the person currently accused of the crime being described as a murderer. There is a presumption of innocence in this country. The rule of law is the most fundamental thing that keeps our society safe. We need to strengthen it in the case of women's safety, for sure. But we must nevertheless repeat the mantra that the rule of law is sacrosanct. I
want to be careful not I want to be careful not to go into the details of the case, obviously, with someone having been charged. But Susie, jump back in.
There is a rule of law, and the rule of law says you can't be arrested without good reason. Sitting down next to a bandstand isn't a good reason to me, even during a pandemic. It also says that women should feel safe walking home, and they don't. And it says that we should be able to trust the police, and also that the police with our consent. What happened tonight, I don't live in London, I'm not policed by the Metropolitan Police anymore. I did do a few years ago, but this does not happen with my consent. And I'm no barrister, but I'm pretty certain it's illegal to screw women without their consent. And what's happened today on Clapham Common has screwed every woman in this country.
And we've just got about 30 seconds before the break, but I want to ask you both this. Susie, where do you think we go next after what has been a horrific week or so?
I hope we have a fair trial without any contempt of court issues, and that the main suspect in the murder gets his hearing that he should have, and that Sarah gets justice. That's the most important thing. And Matthew, I hope that tomorrow everyone remembers they've all got a mother. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And Matthew, you've done a lot of work with young men, with boys as well. You've written about it a great deal. And, education is key to this as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely fundamental. I had a letter today, an email from my son's school, where one of the teaching staff has said that my son is 7 years old. I think it's absolutely crucial that young men, he's a boy,